And we're off and we're live. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Lunch and Learn. It's that time of the week again where we all get really excited and just have the biggest laugh over on the Zoom channel. So do come and join us. 924-139-247. There is a password, and if you don't know it, it's in the Shaw Facebook group. But I'm not going to publicize it on the internet to the millions of people that might be watching. So do let me know if you are unable to get in. A couple of words maybe about Sukkot, since that is right around the corner. There's not going to be a Torah reading, at least not a continuation of the Parshiot. There will be a Torah reading, of course, but we won't be reading the next Parashah. Not until Simchat Torah, anyway. That was the other apology I needed to make. I'm not sure we'll have a class next week in the middle of Sukkot. We'll have to watch this space. There will be some exciting stuff that we're doing next week. I'm going this afternoon to collect a van, what would you call it, a recovery vehicle, which we are hoping to affix a 2x2 meter sukkah and use to drive around Bushi and give people an opportunity to spend a couple of minutes at least inside the sukkah. So that's quite exciting. That's all going to be announced in the next 24 to 48 hours, all being well. What else? What else is going on? Yeah, so I don't know yet what my Thursday is going to look like next week. So let's hedge our bets and predict that there might not be a session. That's number one. Number two, a couple of words about Sukkot. Two big mitzvot that we do over Sukkot. We sit in the sukkah and we shake the arba minim. We shake the 4 species. So two very small insights into a sukkah. The sukkah is supposed to be a representation or an opportunity to reflect and to meditate that we are not in control. It doesn't make sense, does it? We're reminiscing about the fact that we used to live in Sukkot when we lived in the desert, or it's supposed to symbolize the clouds of glory that surrounded the Jewish people in the desert. But either way, we're commemorating the fact that we spent time in the desert living in very insecure accommodation, right? And so the reflection and the meditation and the internalization that we're supposed to think about is that we are not in control and we need Hashem, who really provides for us. And so we put ourselves in these shaky structures to remind us of that fact. And I think now more than ever, we're starting to finally get that message that we are not in control. So that's one small reflection. Another small reflection, they call the sukkah like a hug from Hashem. It's we come out of our homes and we come into the outstretched arms of the Almighty to protect us and look after us. And there's a lovely idea that if you look at the Hebrew letters, that make up the word sukkah, so there's a samach, which is enclosed on 4 sides, like a sukkah that has 4 walls. There is a kaf, which is enclosed on 3 sides. I don't know if I'm doing it in the right direction on your screens, so I'll do it in both directions, just in case. So a kaf is enclosed on 3 sides, and you can have a kosher sukkah with just 3 walls and 1 open wall. And then you have a hay, which is 2 sides and then a little bit. And that is because, but they're, according to the halacha, if you have a sukkah with 2 walls and 1 little bit of an extra wall, then that is also a kosher sukkah. So the 3 letters of the word sukkah coincide with the number of walls that you could have as your sukkah. Just like an interesting pictorial visual message over there. But it's called the hug of Hashem because as we said, the minimum amount of a sukkah is 2 walls and then a little bit. And how much of an arm do you need to be able to give someone a hug? Well, you need this bit, that bit, and that little bit there. So we are getting a hug from Hashem. How lovely is that? The minimum amount that you need to get a hug is one wall, another wall, and then a little bit more. And that's the hug from Hashem. Rita.
Yes. What's the word sukkah means?
It means sukkah. Yeah. We use the word, we translate it as what, like tabernacles and booths, and things like that. Pardon me?
That's a translation of sukkah.
Sure, whatever. Yeah. No, yeah, the sukkah we translate as these are poor translations. Tabernacle and booth. It's called the Festival of Tabernacles. It's called the Festival of Booths.
Does it come from the same origin as the souk that you would have in the Middle East?
No, the word shuk comes from the same word as souk.
Shuk.
Shuk, yeah, we call marketplaces in Israel shuk.
Shuk, yeah.
And
No, I was just sitting there thinking, oh, that
Yeah.
sounds like the beginning of a souk.
yeah.
But it's not.
It does share a connection with the word schach, which is to do with the coverings. What else would it have to do? Maybe it's in my email this week. I get these emails. I never get time to read them. But there's this amazing guy, I can't remember his name, who sends out a weekly email. I magically became subscribed to his weekly emails, and he analyzes Hebrew words and the roots that they all share and comes up with like really fascinating connections. He's amazing at this stuff. I might just, great, my computer's freezing. In a moment, I'll just check and see if he talks about the word sukkah and see if I can share anything. Because as I said, I haven't read it and I don't usually get the time to read it. But fascinating nonetheless that Hebrew words are all connected through their roots. So the truth is, whether or not there's a connection between suk and sukkah, there very well might be, because the sounds are connected, but the letters are not the same. One is spelt with a samach and a chaf, which is sukkah, and the shuk, the suk, would be spelt with a shin and a kuf. So it's a fair question, but I don't know, is my answer. Let's have a look. Can we find him quickly enough? Where would he be? What's his name? I can't remember his name, of course. Is he in my junk? He was in my junk, but he's not there now. Where is he? Where is he? Come on, let's find this for them quickly. We've got people watching on live TV here. What am I playing at? There he is, RC Klein. RC Klein, what does he talk about? Nothing. He doesn't talk about anything. It's just an advert. Okay. He hasn't sent out his message this week. I'll let you know is the answer if I can do any better. So that's a little message on the sukkah, a little message on the Arba Minim. We always talk about how the 4 species represent 4 different types of Jews. You've got the etrog, which has a smell and a taste, and that represents a Jew who is both active in his deeds and in his mitzvot and in his practice, his learning and his practice. You've got the hadassim, the myrtle, which has a smell but no taste. I can never remember which way round this is. The lulav has got a taste but no smell. The myrtles have a smell but no taste, and the willow has no taste and no smell. And this represents people that either have got they learn Torah, or they do mitzvot, or they do one of them but not the other one, or they don't do either. Right? So it signifies and it symbolizes all 4 different types of Jews that can exist. But the point is that they come together and we hold them together and we embrace all 4 species together to be able to perform the service of Hashem, which is a beautiful idea as well. Not yet. I'm scared of your questions, Claudia. No. No, I'm joking. So the idea is that we bring all 4 of these types of Jews together. They're all part of Hashem's family, they're all embraced and they're all welcome. Go on, Claudia.
He's gone.
Oh,
No, sorry, I'm on my mobile. Is there some sort of, can you draw some sort of parallel with the 4 sons that are referred to at Pesach? Is there one, or is that just...
there has to be, because 4 equals 4. So any 4 in Judaism will be all connected. But yeah, I mean, all four of those sons are welcome at the table as well. There is an idea of unity. There is an idea of appreciating the complexities and differences that people have, and accommodating for each of them. There will definitely be a connection between the 4 sons and the 4 species. But I don't know what a good way of linking the two would necessarily be. They'll also be connected to the 4 cups of wine. They'll also be connected to the 4 ancestral mothers. It's all connected.
Cool.
It's all connected.
Thank you.
But yes, thank you for the question. All right, that's a little bit on Sukkot. And let's now have a look at Pirkei Avot. Into the world of Pirkei Avot we delve. I just realised why that's not coming up. All right, let's get this on the screen. Is everybody ready? Are you ready? Let's get ready to rumble. Let's get it on the screen. Boom. Beautiful. Oh, come on. There it is. All right, everyone seeing that on the screen?
Yeah.
Lovely. We are. Oh gosh, we're all miles away. Come on, Nick. Get on top of this, Nicholas. There we go. Got it. Number 11 on the screen there, and could be as many as number 15 in people's books. All right, let's have a look, shall we? Everybody ready? Here we go. We are introduced this week to Rabbi Elazar of Modi'in. Anybody want to read it?
The one who profanes sacred things, and one who despises the festivals, and one who causes his fellows' face to blush in public, the one who annuls the covenant of our father Abraham, may he rest in peace, and he who is contemptuous towards the Torah, even though he has to his credit knowledge of the Torah and good deeds, he has not a share in the world to come.
Who are 5 things where Rabbi Elazar Hamodai says, Rabbi Elazar of Modi'in says, even if you're a good guy, if you're doing any of these 5 things, then he uses a very harsh repercussion. Ein lo chelek la'olam haba. The person does not have a portion, does not have a share in the world to come. So take a moment to absorb and to reflect, and let's see what y'all think.
Wait, is Modayin the same Modayin that exists today?
Probably the same area. Yes. Yeah. Obviously, it wouldn't have looked like it does now. Not as many Anglos. But yes, it would have been the same region where Modi'in is, I would imagine.
Rabbi, what right does this rabbi have
Ooh, what right? I love it. Yeah.
to take away, to be able to even think like this? Surely it's up to Hashem. And maybe they've done this all year round, but they did go on Yom Tov and say they're sorry, Yom Kippur came along. But no, as far as he's concerned, on what basis does he say that it's okay? We will have no share in the world to come.
Amazing.
That is a very, very dodgy thing to say.
Amazing question. Give me 1 second.
What are you going to make it?
Okay, so two things that I will respond to that. There is precedent for being able to say groups of people who are not deserving of a portion in the world to come. It traces back to the Talmud in Sanhedrin, where it talks about people that are not deserved of a place. That's number one. So all he's doing is talking around that kind of concept, right? So we do have an idea of the people that that have that repercussion facing them. Number two, it's kind of a bit of a spoiler alert because we would have got to this point eventually, but let's make this point now.
I'll leave it. It's okay.
No. Thank you. These all seem to be things. These all seem to be violations that are much more thought through, right? You know, there's a point that's made, and we say at the end, even though a person may be a good person, even though they may have Torah in their hand, yeah? So one of the commentaries that I was reading was saying that we're not dealing with sins of passion. Someone who got a temptation to steal, somebody who got a temptation to mix with the wrong types of people, whatever it might be. The categories that we're dealing with here are mindsets that a person is consciously and actively choosing, the ramifications of which may manifest themselves in these kinds of areas. So it's not a crime of passion. It is a crime of having completely established your mindset, your reason for existence, however you want to phrase it. That is what is leading to these actions. Not somebody who accidentally misappropriates sanctifying things. Not someone who accidentally tries to cover up their bris milah. You know, these are active, deliberate decisions which are in defiance of the purpose of our relationship with our Hashem, with Hashem.
But why don't they add on the end? But on Yom Kippur, if they genuinely do tshuva, etc., then they will be given forgiveness. If there is no concept of forgiveness, which there isn't here, then
I think that though it's not obvious to everybody, I don't believe he needed to state that because we know that
it is obvious.
Yeah,
just
we know.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
It's not a contradiction. May he rest in peace. And then he says there's no share in the world to come.
No, Abraham should rest in peace.
Abraham should rest in peace.
Yeah, the words in the Hebrew are V'hamefer brito shel Avraham Avinu alav shalom. So Abraham should rest in peace.
Right, okay.
It all makes a lot of sense until you read, it's all sort of religious, connected to religion, except where he says, the one who causes his fellow's face to blush in public.
Okay, very good. And why doesn't that make sense?
Well, it's a bit vague, isn't it? And the others are all very pointed, and that one, how do you I know it describes it, but how do you actually pin it down? Well, what does it mean?
Okay. Well, we can get there. We'll as we start to unravel what all these things are. But your observation so far is that profaning something sacred, despising festivals, voiding the covenants, which granted I gave away there, is talking about the Brit Milah. But then all of a sudden you've got someone who's humiliating his friend in public, and that seems a little bit different, would you say?
Yeah, I would say it's
well, as you said, less predetermined.
less predetermined.
The others, you've got to have a mindset to do. They
Uh-huh.
are serious things.
Oh, I
of the
see.
mindset.
Okay, yeah. But
Causing
this,
someone to blush.
But don't you also have a mindset to offend someone?
Yes, it's a deliberate attempt to embarrass them.
that is pretty much where we get to, yes. Yeah, you'll see that there are ways of looking at this mission and seeing everything as connected, and so there is a way of looking at this and realizing that it's all connected to the way in which we view our worldview. Maybe we'll start there. It's interesting because it's my notes at the end, but let's start with my notes at the end. There's an interpretation called the Yalkut Gershoni, who observes that if we look at these 5 things, then we're looking at a slippery slope. And what connects these 5 things is a person is not appreciating the difference between holiness and the mundane. He's not being, as we would say in Hebrew, being mavdil ben kodesh lachol. Yeah, he's not appreciating that there are things that are holy and there are things that are not holy. So if you start to lose your perspective on that, then you will eventually it will have a knock-on effect to all of these different things. So the first one that we start off with is one who profanes things that are sacred. So what does that mean? That means that there are sacrifices, there are things belonging to the temple, to the Beis HaMikdash, which have intrinsic holiness to them. And this person is now saying that there's no difference between them. There's no difference between a bull that has been set aside for sacrificing in the temple and a bull that you would slaughter to be able to eat for your dinner in the market, whatever it is. So if you're already not appreciating the difference between holiness, something which is sacred, and something which is mundane, then it's going to get to a point where you won't appreciate that there's a difference between the days of the week. There's a difference between Shabbat and the other 6 days of the week. There's a difference between the Chagim and the other days of the week. It's a knock-on effect. You're failing to realize the difference between holiness and mundane. So the next, or not the next thing, but another thing is you will not appreciate that that there is a difference between humankind and animals, and you won't appreciate this, the need to have sensitivity to human beings, and that will lead you to take steps like humiliating someone in public. How could you humiliate someone and cause them such grief and offense and insult and hurt? You would never do that if you appreciated what you're putting at risk and where it could lead a person if you were to treat them in that way. A person who's trying to disguise his Brit, okay, that's what that point in the Mishnah is referring to. It's a person who's trying to annul and sever the covenant that was made between Hashem and Abraham and the Jewish people. That's our bris milah. So a person who's trying to belittle that or cover it up or pretend it's not there, whatever it is. So we're not appreciating that there's a holiness that is given to the Jewish people over other nations. And then finally, a person who is belittling and mocking and acting and or preaching in a way that is against Torah and the Halakha, we're not appreciating that there's a holiness to the Torah that is not necessarily as prevalent in other texts and other ways of life. So it's a slippery slope and it's a knock-on effect, and it seems to be rooted in the appreciation of things which are holier than other things. So I can't remember what question we were answering now, but I start at the end in that regard. Pardon me?
Can I comment on that?
With pleasure.
Sorry.
As only if you're completely agreeing with me. No, I'm joking. Carry on.
Absolutely. You mentioned slippery slope.
Yeah.
But also, there's a concept about slippery slopes, sometimes being sticky slopes. So
Sometimes things, what, sorry?
Sorry, sometimes slippery slopes can also be sticky slopes.
Sticky slope, yes.
Which is quite a cool concept. So you could perhaps slip beyond the first one you mentioned, and then actually not go down the other lines. So what you're saying is one is inevitability of the other, but it needn't necessarily be so. And if that's the case, then I can't remember who said this, was it Paul? Who said this at the beginning, then surely you can ask for forgiveness on Yom Kippur.
You can always ask anyway. But I mean, one of the things that we will always say is whatever mindset a person is stuck in, they've always got that option there to break free of that mindset. So with all of this, even if they go down a slippery slope, they can still come out of the slope the slip at any time. So
which was what I was. Yes, that's what I was trying to say.
Right.
Slippery slopes don't necessarily need to be inevitable.
Right. No. Yes. Okay. That's fair. But a person that doesn't otherwise try and sever the progression, or doesn't try and break the routine, or doesn't try and fix their ways, mend their ways, then what we're trying to piece together is how all of these 5 things are connected in that way. And they all seem to be rooted in
interesting, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Surely, in this day and age, if you were writing this, if you were this particular rabbi, you would write it in a far more constructive mode than this rabbi has. You would say, in order to avoid losing your share in the world to come, make sure that we do this, and it'd be really helpful if you did that. You know what I think you should do is maybe, and you would write it today in business, in life generally, in a constructive mood, as opposed to for anyone who does this and that, well, for sure, he's showing the no because he's not going to get anything.
So the only way that I can respond to that is in the following way. Number 1, the Mishnah is always written as concisely as possible. So without me thinking too heavily about how I would rewrite it, however this has been written, is written in the most concise way, with using as few words as possible. So it's never the style of a Mishnah to do that with words and to flesh it out and to write it in alternative tones and that kind of thing.
Wouldn't you started to avoid losing one's share in the world, and then go on to say the things that you should do to avoid it in a constructive way?
Right.
That's what I'm saying. It would have the same amount of words in it, and it would mean exactly the same, but it would start with, to avoid this, you do that. It's a constructive argument rather than this, which is pretty tough.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is there's the Mishnah which connects to this concept of losing our world to come is actually the words that we started Pirkei Avot, or the opening of every chapter of Pirkei Avot with, which is Kol Yisrael Yesh Lahem Chelek La'olam Haba. All of Israel, right? This was the very, very first week. All of Israel has a place and has a share in the world to come. So that was what we start with. That's the starting point in the Mishnah. Then there's the flip side to that, which the words then continue. Ve'elu she'ein lahem chelek la'olam haba. These are the categories of people that do not have a share in the world to come. I can call it up for you on the screen over here, just so that you can see it.
No, it's fine. I remember it clearly.
No, but this is the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, which is also part of the Mishnah. Same way that Pirkei Avot is part of the Mishnah, this is also part of the Mishnah. So this is the opening. All of the Jewish people have a share in the world to come, even sinners and even those who are liable to be executed with a court-imposed death penalty. All of these people have some kind of share in the world to come.
Yeah.
And then these are the exceptions, the people who have no share in the world to come, even when they have fulfilled many mitzvot. One who denies the concept of the resurrection of the dead. One who says that the Torah did not originate from heaven, and Epicurus, right? And then there's other ones. Rabbi Akiva includes someone who reads external literature, but it's meaning more that they develop a mindset that is contrary to the Torah. So these are the things that lead a person to being denied a place in the world to come. And the source that we're looking at over here is a point made by Rabbi Elazar of other people that becomes like an extension to that core teaching. And if we appreciate the time when he was living at the time of the Roman siege, living at a time when people were trying to assimilate into Roman pagan culture, he's trying to steer people away from, as we called it, the slippery slope, the sticky slope, the slopey slope, the wrong way, the wrong mentality, the wrong belief systems that people were being tempted by.
Thank you.
So I don't know how much better I would write it. I appreciate your point that with our lenses we need it written in different ways, but that's why we need to discuss these things thousands of years later, because the concise way in which they're written requires further explanation, further analysis. I completely agree.
Okay.
Rita.
Yeah, I just want to make sure to understand. I understand the first one, this masochistic, I understand the blushing public, understand that. Do I use the covenant of our father Abraham, it means circumcision?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, we're gonna get there. Let's go through the first one. Hamachalel et hakodshim. So on the one hand, this means that they are belittling and denying and refusing to acknowledge that some things are holy and some things are set aside for service to Hashem. But not only that, but there's an appreciation when someone verbalizes and articulates that they want to set something aside for a holy use. So our words have the power to literally infuse that item with holiness. So there's also within this, there's a flippant attitude to the ability to change things, change the status of things with the way that we talk and with the way that we treat things. And so we're mocking these people. We're talking about people that are mocking things which are sacred, things which are holy, the ability to change the status of something. And not just that, but there are commentaries which look at this and say that if you've got a flippant attitude to being able to make items holy, they're going to have a flippant attitude to anyone who tries to become holy in their own life and in their own way. You know, somebody starts coming to shul because they've had some kind of awakening or whatever it is, that, you know, they want to start coming to shul more regularly and all the rest of it. If we were to have, you know, look at this person and say, like, why has he come to shul? Don't we know that last year this guy was, you know, exposed for whatever he did wrong? You know, he's a bit dodgy in business. What right does he have to come to shul? If we don't have the ability to accept people being on a journey and being able to change and being able to become holier, then we have a problem there. We have to learn to accept people changing their status through their actions and not to flippantly discard it. There's one commentary that says that we have to have that same attitude towards ourselves. You know, we have to believe that we are capable of change as well, and not to flippantly discard anything that we do. You know, one day you wake up and you say, I'm going to try this, I'm going to be nicer to this person, I'm going to, you know, make an effort to do that. And then another voice in your head tells you, what's the point? You're never going to be able to stick to it. Or what's the point? You did that yesterday. What gives you the right to think you can do this now? We have to learn to address those voices in our head as well, because it's all rooted in this concept of profaning things which are sacred, belittling things that are sacred. We are sacred as well, and so we have to be careful. Now, that doesn't mean that someone who talks to themselves or talks themselves down is not entitled to a place in the world to come. It's not what I'm saying, but conceptually, it's all part of the same package. Appreciating that things can be on different levels of holiness and different levels of sacredness. It's all part of that same package. That's number one. That's hamachalel et hakodshim. Somebody who is profaning and mocking and secularizing and all the rest of it, things which are otherwise supposed to be sacred. There's another point here, which is that we say at the end of the Mishnah, even if a person is a good guy, so even though the person is a good guy, they're not entitled to a place in the world to come. So it's easy to, we often talk about this. People just want to get through life just being a good guy. Isn't it enough that I'm a good person? But what's interesting here is that we're seeing categories where you are causing harm to the survival of Judaism, you are causing harm to the survival of the Jewish people, you are having a misguided and misleading influence on people around you through your attitudes, through your viewpoints, and it's important to acknowledge that as well. If we give off an air, if we constantly share with people how insignificant holy things are, so yeah, great, you're a great guy, but think about the damage that you could be causing on other people's practice, on other people's observance, on other people's viewpoints, because of an opinion that a person might have. So we're mocking sacred things. The next thing is hamavazer et hamoadot. We're rejecting the calendar. We're rejecting the holy days. We're saying like, come on, Shabbos, it's just like any other day. Rosh Hashanah, what do we need it for? Yom Kippur, Spurs are on. I'm going to go and watch that instead. It's an attitude of disengagement from parts of Jewish practice which are important, such as Shabbat, such as the Chagim, such as Rosh Chodesh, all these kinds of things. If we are delegitimizing, belittling, ignoring, causing other people to have negative attitudes towards Shabbos, towards the festivals, whatever it might be, these things have a knock-on effect to other people, which we have to be careful of. So there's a call for us to look within ourselves as to whether we treat these days with respect, whether we acknowledge their function and their role, even if we don't understand the depths and the breadths and the layers of everything involved with those days, to kind of to lead our lives with an attitude of these things are completely insignificant. God doesn't exist anyway. He doesn't care what you do. He doesn't care if we don't mark these things, which are scary mindsets. Shabbos is built into the creation of the world, the creation of the universe. We go through 6 days of creation, and on the 7th day, we declare in the Torah that there's such a concept as Shabbat. It's built into the system of creation, is an acknowledgement that 1 day a week is entirely different to the other 6 days. So somebody who is rejecting this, despising this, trying to cause other people to have that same approach, these are dangerous shark-infested waters that we're playing with. And then the next one who humiliates his fellow in public, which we were pointing out is kind of like, well, everyone does that, but we wouldn't do that if we appreciated how much of an impact our words or our actions can have on other people. We all know, well, maybe we don't all know, but some of us may have suffered through being shamed in public, be it in a classroom, be it in a social gathering, being it in our place of work, maybe even in shul. People have felt hugely humiliated and embarrassed. We have to be extremely sensitive to how people will be affected by the way that we treat them. The Talmud compares this concept of humiliating people. They compare it to murder. They say a person who has humiliated someone in public, it is as if you have killed them, because the blood rushing to your face and then being drained and being left with this pale, what do you call it? Pale countenance? No, pale.
Complexion.
Yes, complexion and this mortified look that a person can have on their face. That draining away of the blood, it's as if you've chopped off their head and their blood has just splayed everywhere. So we're really cautioned against humiliating people in public. What's interesting is we have to keep in mind, Rabbi Elazar is saying this at a time when people were publicly belittling and trying to ruin Judaism for everybody else, and yet nonetheless he is saying that that we shouldn't necessarily embarrass these people and humiliate these people and cause them to be shamed in public. It's an interesting concept as well. We say when we put the Torah back, we sing which means that its ways, the Torah's ways, are supposed to be ways of pleasantness. They're supposed to be ways of peace, so that even if people are getting in our faces, even if the culture is pulling us in the other direction to embarrass people, to shame people, to say what we like and not be thoughtful of the consequences, from a Torah perspective, we are supposed to rise above that and go against that grain. It is worth reflecting on the world that we live in, just how popular it is for people to shame those in public that make mistakes. And we talked about this culture before, but all the tweets and the Facebook posts, and whenever someone says something or does something that offends you or offends someone else, before you know it, everyone is just going crazy on social media with their opinions of how demonic and how terrible and how evil people are. We're challenged to rise above that and to not give in to the temptation of humiliating, belittling, diminishing someone's stature just so that we can get a bit more honor. Look how many likes I've got because I tweeted this about that footballer or about that celebrity or about that rabbi or about that friend of mine or whoever it is. We get a lot of honor at someone else's expense, and we're not supposed to be. So that is humiliating someone in public. Hamefer Brito Shel Avraham Avinu. Someone who is annulling the covenant of Avraham Avinu, which is a bris milah. So either a person may be refusing to get a circumcision for themselves or for their children, or they're trying to conceal the fact that they have a circumcision. They're turning their back on their national identity. They may have a deep-seated self-hatred. All of these things are being cautioned against in this Mishnah. By the way, an amazing story that I heard about a rabbi called Chaim Berliner who lived in Russia, and so he was a rabbi there, and somebody came to him and said that he has had a child, but he is a very successful businessman in Russia. Let me just try and see if I can figure out when he lived. We are talking 1832 to 1912. So we're talking mid-1800s. He was the chief rabbi of Moscow from 1865 to 1889. So sometime during that time frame, A Russian businessman, Jewish, came to him and said, I've had a son, but I'm a very successful businessman. No one knows that I'm Jewish. No one's allowed to know that I'm Jewish, but I want you to give him a circumcision. So they make all these arrangements. They send home all of the non-Jewish staff for the day. And it's just him and this rabbi in the room. The father acts as the sun deck. He holds the child on his lap. Rabbi Berlin comes to perform the circumcision. And afterwards they're talking about it. And they say, like, why have you done all of this? Why does it mean so much to you? And he said that, you know, I live as a non-Jew. Nobody knows that I'm Jewish. Nobody can know that I'm Jewish. But I wanted to be able to give my son the option so that if down the line circumstances change, if afterwards he finds out that he's Jewish, then I want him to at least be in the situation and in the position of having been circumcised so that he can engage in whatever way he sees fit to be able to do it, which is an amazing thing. And it's a testimony to this innate trait that's buried deep inside each and every one of us, that however far away people might be from Judaism, they are still, you know, somewhat connected, however tenuously, however weakly. People can still have an extremely strong connection to something, what we call in Yiddish the Pintele Yid. And the fact that a person, therefore, as we see in this mission, is making such a bold statement of wanting nothing to do with Hashem, wanting nothing to do with Judaism, then you can appreciate a little bit of why this mission might be as stern and as strict as it is. So for a person to not have any Jewish connection, but to want them to have something and some identifying mark that keeps them connected to the Jewish people, it's an amazing concept. And if we think about it, the things that we're seeing in this Mishnah, they're all things which are, you're trying to sever your connection with God. Not you, but a person is trying to sever their connection with God. To say there's no such thing as holy items. There's no sacrifices are pointless. Chagim, pointless. Bris Milah, pointless. Judaism, pointless. It's all pointless. It doesn't mean anything. God doesn't exist, right? So if a person is severing their connection in that way, then the punishment is you know, measure for measure. You're severing your relationship. You're severing your connection. And Hashem is then severing it in return. Why would you deserve? Why would a person be entitled to a place in the world to come? You don't believe in it. You don't want anything to do with it. You've made every active decision in a lifetime to sever that connection. So why should we be surprised then that the outcome of that is the person is not given the same share in the world to come as someone who's invested in the relationship in whatever they have done? The final thing of Hamagale Panim Batorah, Shalok Halacha, a person who reveals a face of Torah that is not in accordance with Halacha, that is contrary to Halacha. We have a concept in Judaism, Shivim Panim LaTorah. There are 70 faces to the Torah. There are 70 ways of interpreting Torah in ways that are consistent and ways that are not contrary to Torah and the Halacha. And what we're saying over here is we've got a person who is now trying to teach something, publicly share what he or she may call wisdom, but is running completely antithetical to Judaism, to Torah, to Halacha. So this as well is something to be cautious of and to be to steer away from. We don't deny people the opportunity to have an opinion, but where a person is trying to diminish the authenticity or diminish the truthfulness, the veracity of Torah ideas and Torah concepts and Jewish concepts, we have to be cautious and steer away from that as well. So those are the 5 things that he says in this mission. It's fascinating. It's incredibly deep. And I don't know if people have got anything to comment on that they completely disagree with the interpretations and the way that we've analysed this, but it's interesting. A person who is denying these core principles, these core points of faith, these core differentiations and different levels of sanctity. It's interesting. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I feel this is aimed more towards believers than disbelievers, or people who become disconnected, because a person who's not connected anymore may not be concerned he has got a share in the world to come. But somebody who is a believer would certainly be aggravated by that. So that's what I feel this is, because the person who's gone so far away may not be concerned.
Yes.
It's not actually telling them to come back, is it? It's just saying these are the facts. And these people will not have a share in the world to come.
Although, as Paul readily points out, you never know when the person's going to want to come back and when they're going to want to change their view. And so if there is that awakening, these might be the first things that they deal with, because they'll see this and they'll be like, oh, crumbs. Or I hadn't appreciated the severity of what was coming my way for having these beliefs. So you're right. But that's the same with a lot of things. Anyone who is so far away, consciously so far away, is not going to be affected and is not going to be inspired and is not going to care about anything that they see or anything that they learn. Also worth pointing out, we're not talking about someone that's never had the right approach and the right attitudes given to them. Someone who has grown up in an environment without any kind of Torah education, without any kind of exposure to Judaism, that's not necessarily what we're talking about. As we said, we are talking about people who have consciously decided, weighing up on the balance of merits and demerits, they've decided, this isn't for me. I don't believe in this. So that's important to keep in mind as well. We're not talking about someone that's never been shown authentic Judaism and yet holds these beliefs, because they've never made an active decision to follow these different approaches. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it also may be that they're only doing one of these things, not all of them. So it's easier to get back if you're only doing one of them rather than the whole lot. That's what Claudia was saying. Catch it early. Nip it in the bud, because otherwise one can lead on to another. So yeah, 100%. All right, I had prepared the next one, but it's 1 o'clock, people. So that's all we've got time for. I will wish you all, at least I don't need to spend so long preparing for the next session. What I will do though is wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom, and I will wish everybody a Chag Sameach. And one final point, we have a mitzvah to be happy on Sukkot, to which we could ask, well, how am I supposed to be happy sitting outside in the garden in the freezing cold, potentially out in my sukkah? So just harkening back to what we were talking about, the festival of happiness, not the festival, the festival on which we're appreciating that Hashem is in control. When we start to internalize that Hashem is in control, and when we start to internalize that I've just got to be and I've just got to do and be comfortable with who I am, be comfortable with where I am and the progress that I'm making, etc., etc. Once the hard decisions are taken out of our hands, then we can start to train ourselves to be happy. So it's all connected.
Question.
Yeah.
What year was this? Are we talking about?
Well, we are talking about. So the specific years that I can see here in this book that I've got here, he was a relative of Bar Kokhba, And the Bar Kokhba rebellion was 135 to 139 CE. So we're talking about the turn of the 2,000 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
The turn of the Common Era. That's what I was trying to say. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, wish you all Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach. If you want to come join us for the after party on Zoom, we'll see you right now. But for now, we're going to sign off. Take care, everyone on Zoom everyone on Facebook and YouTube.